We've got some breaking news. This is often the case. I'm trying to read it off my phone. We are learning from New York Times reporters that Jared Kushner was already questioned by special counsel Jack Smith. Tim Hafey, you had a chance to talk to Jared Kushner. I remember his testimony as a tad smug. But take us through what he provided to you and what opportunities, if any, Jack Smith might have had to push further and what they would have wanted in terms of a criminal context from Jared Kushner.
Yeah, so we did spend about 8 hours with Mr. Kushner. He did submit to a voluntary interview by the Select Committee. There are really two separate things that about which he has information, Nicole. He's part of the president's family, was involved in discussions soon after the election in which the president was told directly that he lost. He was present for this meeting where the pollster of the data guy from the campaign actually presented the numbers and went through the sort of explanation of the decreased margins in the suburban areas. And he was already starting to move to Florida. He and his wife were looking at property and schools for their kids in November. So we developed a lot of information from him about direct communications with the president about the fact of the election loss. But the other thing that's really crucial about Kushner is that he was directly involved in the campaign fundraising that then became the Stop the Steal fundraising. He was personally briefed almost daily about the cash machine, the veritable hand-over-fist money-making machine that was Stop the Steal. As we've discussed, the Trump campaign pivoted to a fundraising operation focused on the fact that the false narrative of election fraud. Jared Kushner was right in the center of strategy of mining that false narrative for repeated cash contributions of up to $250 million after the election. So to the extent Jack Smith is looking into campaign fundraising based on these false statements of election fraud, Jared Kushner would have information about that as well.
Well, Tim, Jared Kushner, I think, also sat atop the very sketchy / corrupt pardon process. And if you thought you were going to be there a second term, would you really pardon your dad? I mean, it seems that if all the people who knew, the gig was up, the lights were going out, Jared Kushner's at the top of the list.
Yeah, exactly right. He was right in the center of a lot of conversations and was one of the voices we developed that was more realistic about the election. Your point about politics there and pardons is important too, Nicole. One of the things that's getting lost here, and Secretary Benson's comments bring it to mind, is all of this effort that the president and his conspirators were focused upon was on Republicans. Secretary of State Benson, very same position as Secretary of State Raffensperger, she doesn't get a call from Donald Trump. He's not calling Democrats. If he was truly concerned about election fraud and thought that there was actual evidence of election fraud, he'd be calling everyone. But instead, he's calling Republicans. In Arizona, we're about to talk about Arizona, he doesn't call the Secretary of State in Arizona. She's a Democrat. He calls Rusty Bowers, the Republican leader of the legislature. So this is a nakedly partisan effort to try to get Republicans to violate their oath to stay in power. The difference in terms of how he treats or reaches out to Democratic office holders, lack of outreach, Republican office holders, even outside of the Secretary of State's chain, repeated outreach to them, shows this sort of nakedly political desire. And to Neil's point, suggests he knew that it was cheating. He could only get Republicans to help him.
Let me read some more from this piece that Tim and I are talking about. The New York Times has just dropped a piece of reporting that says this: prosecutors ask witnesses whether Trump acknowledged he lost the 2020 race. It starts this way. Federal prosecutors investigating former President Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election have questioned multiple witnesses in recent weeks, including Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, about whether Trump had privately acknowledged in the days after the 2020 election that he had lost. The reporting's based on 4 people briefed on the matter. The line of questioning, reports the New York Times, suggests prosecutors are trying to establish whether Trump was acting with corrupt intent as he sought to remain in power, essentially that his efforts were knowingly based on a lie, evidence that could substantially bolster any case they might decide to bring against him. Kushner testified before a grand jury at the federal courthouse in Washington last month, where he said to maintain that it was his impression that Trump truly believed the election was stolen, according to a person briefed on the matter. Andrew Weissman, saying that Trump really thought it was stolen isn't the same as Trump having information that anything had been stolen. I mean, it feels like Jared Kushner may be watching his inheritance with one eye and his legal hide with the other. I mean, you have so much evidence that people went right to Trump and told him that he lost. Nobody went in and told him the opposite except the pillow person, the pardoned Mike Flynn. I mean, what questions do you have about this new reporting?
So a couple things. One, regardless of whatever someone's opinion is, so Jared Kushner's opinion about what he thinks the president truly believed or didn't is not admissible. What is going to be admissible is what facts are there. And this really goes to Tim's point that he's sort of said over and over again. There are no facts. And just remember, to this day, there are no facts. In other words, like even if there were no facts then, even now, there's still no facts. So at the end of the day, criminal cases where facts and law matter. And so the other point is that putting in to the grand jury people like Jared Kushner, everyone who was around the president to learn what they would say is a critical part of what Jack Smith's job is at this point. Whether their information is going to be good or bad, they need to know what these potential witnesses would say, whether they're favorable or whether they might get called as a defense witness. They want to know exactly what their story is now, because if there are ways to undermine it, if they actually think it's credible, they want to know what it is that they're dealing with. And finally, if you look at what the Florida case teaches us, it's that Jack Smith has been meticulous. He has really done sort of this chapter and verse interviewing of everybody under the sun, it appears. And that's what he's going to need to do. And it appears that's exactly what he is doing in connection with the January 6th case. So it makes total sense that you would put Jared Kushner in the grand jury. But again, his opinion about the president, not particularly relevant. And even if it came in, not that relevant unless he has facts to support it.
Neil, I'm just thinking about what Jared Kushner's life has entailed since he knew that his father had lost re-election. I mean, he spends the transition not helping the next administration deal with any of the items in his portfolio, but in the Middle East, where his post-White House life has included raising millions of dollars. I mean, to find someone more acutely aware and more transactional in how he used the period from when his father-in-law lost re-election to when they left Washington would be difficult.
Yeah, Nicole, and it's the rare time I'll ever correct you, but it's not millions, it's billions of dollars.
Billions.
I think it's
it's $2 billion, yes.
Yeah, and it totally makes sense for reasons Andrew is saying for Jack Smith to be trying to interview Jared Kushner. Kushner was in the room where it happened, and Kushner always thinks he's the smartest guy in that room. And so there's no doubt in my mind that he is obfuscating before Jack Smith and saying stuff like his opinion is that Trump thought he legitimately won the election and the like. Kushner has a high view of himself and his ability to do things like that. I mean, remember, this is a guy who thought he could waltz in and solve Mideast peace. I mean, so I wouldn't doubt at all that he's going to obfuscate before Jack Smith. But in reality, Jared is not quite that bright. And there's going to be other contemporary evidence. Who else was in the room with Kushner and Trump whenever they spoke about it? What did the email and text traffic say? What do the other people who Kushner spoke to at the time, what do they say? It's hard to coordinate all of those different stories, which is why investigators do ask every person to tell their story. And so that's part of what Smith's doing here. So to me, this just kind of demonstrates, as Andrew is saying, that Jack Smith has been meticulous in this investigation so far.